Tonight I want to say something honest, something that has been quietly living inside my heart for a very long time. You see, life has a strange way of moving us through crowded streets, silent nights, and countless faces, yet somehow, deep inside, we feel that someone is missing. Like a piece of our soul is wandering somewhere in the world waiting to be found. And I believe that's what love really is, not something rushed, not something forced, but something patient, something timeless. Because the truth is, my heart never belonged to the noise of the world. It was waiting. Waiting through every sunrise, every lonely evening, every moment when hope felt distant. Waiting for a presence it had never met but somehow always knew. And now I understand why. Because my heart waited a lifetime just for you. I spent a long time believing that some hearts are simply meant to wander. Not broken, not empty, just unfinished. Like a story that hasn't met its most important chapter yet. For years, I walked through life with this quiet feeling inside my chest. Not pain, not sadness exactly. Just this strange, silent awareness that someone somewhere existed who would one day make everything make sense. You learn to live with that feeling. You wake up, you go through your days, you laugh with people, you build a life. From the outside, everything looks normal. But deep down there's this quiet room in your heart that no one ever enters. A place you keep untouched. Almost like you're saving it for someone you haven't met yet. And the strange thing is, you don't even know who you're waiting for. You don't know their name. You don't know their voice. You don't know the way their eyes look when they smile. All you know is that somehow your heart recognizes that they exist. Life moves forward anyway. Days turn into months. Months turn into years. You meet people along the way. Some stay for a while. Some disappear as quickly as they arrived. You try to believe maybe this is it. Maybe this is the person you were waiting for. But deep down, that quiet room inside your heart remains closed. It's not because those people weren't good. Many of them were kind. Some of them were beautiful in their own way. But something inside you always knew the truth. Your heart wasn't ready to open that door yet. And sometimes that realization can be lonely. You watch other people fall in love. You watch them build lives together. You see the way their eyes light up when they talk about someone who changed everything for them. And part of you wonders if maybe your moment will never come. Maybe your heart is just one of those hearts that waits forever. But even in those moments of doubt, that quiet feeling never disappears. It stays there like a whisper you can't ignore. A reminder that somewhere out in this enormous world, there is a person whose soul somehow fits perfectly with yours. So you keep going, you keep growing, you keep becoming someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who understands life a little more deeply with every passing year. You learn from heartbreak. You learn from mistakes. You learn from the silence between moments. And without even realizing it, you're slowly becoming the person you were always meant to be when you finally meet them. Because love like that, the kind that feels written into the very fabric of your life, doesn't arrive randomly. It arrives when two lives have traveled enough roads to finally recognize each other. There were nights when the world felt quiet and heavy, when the future seemed uncertain, when the path ahead looked like nothing more than a long stretch of unanswered questions. But even then, somewhere deep inside, there was this quiet hope, not loud. Not dramatic, just steady, like a heartbeat reminding you that something important was still waiting to happen. Time has a strange way of shaping us. It takes the naive dreams we once had and turns them into something deeper, something more real. When you're younger, you imagine love as fireworks and perfect moments. But as the years pass, you start to understand that real love isn't loud, it's calm. It's the feeling of finally being able to breathe after holding your breath for far too long. It's the moment when the quiet room in your heart finally opens, and suddenly the loneliness you carried for years begins to dissolve like morning fog under sunlight. And when that moment finally happens, you realize something incredible. Every year you spent waiting, every road you walked alone, every unanswered question, every silent night, it was all leading somewhere. It was leading to them. To the person your heart somehow knew before your mind ever did. And suddenly the waiting no longer feels like lost time. It feels like preparation. Because the truth is, some hearts are not meant to love quickly. Some hearts are built for something deeper, something stronger, something that requires time, patience, and a lifetime of experiences to truly understand. And when that kind of love finally arrives, it doesn't feel like something new. It feels familiar. Like meeting someone your soul has been searching for across every moment of your life. You look at them and realize that all those years you thought you were simply moving through the world, you were actually moving closer to them. Every choice, every mistake, every unexpected turn, all of it was quietly guiding you toward this one moment where two lives finally intersect. And when you stand there in that moment, looking into the eyes of the person who somehow feels like home, You understand something you never understood before. Your heart wasn't empty all those years. It wasn't lost. It wasn't wandering without purpose. Your heart was waiting, patiently, faithfully, silently holding space for the one person who was always meant to walk into that quiet room and finally make it come alive. Before you came into my life, there was a silence that followed me everywhere. Not the kind of silence you hear in an empty room. It was deeper than that. It lived inside my thoughts, inside the spaces between my breaths, inside the quiet moments when the world slowed down and I was left alone with everything I felt but couldn't explain. From the outside, life looked normal. I moved forward like everyone else. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I laughed at the right moments. I built friendships, chased goals, and walked through crowded streets filled with voices and noise. But even in the middle of all that life, something inside me always felt slightly distant. Like I was present but not completely there. It's a strange thing, realizing that you can be surrounded by people and still feel a kind of quiet loneliness. Not because anyone treated you badly, not because life was unfair, but because there was a part of your heart that hadn't found where it belonged yet. And that part stayed quiet for a long time. I remember nights when the world slowed down and the noise of the day disappeared. Those were the moments when the silence became the loudest. When you're lying there staring at the ceiling, wondering why something still feels unfinished even when everything around you seems fine. You ask yourself questions you can't answer. Is this it? Is this what life is supposed to feel like? You try to ignore those thoughts. You tell yourself you're overthinking things. You focus on work, on responsibilities, on everything that keeps your mind busy enough not to notice that quiet emptiness. But the heart is stubborn. It keeps reminding you. Sometimes it happens in the smallest moments. You see a couple walking together, laughing about something only they understand. You watch the way two people look at each other, like the world around them has faded into the background. And something inside you pauses, not jealousy, just a quiet awareness, a feeling that somewhere out there exists a connection you haven't experienced yet. So you keep moving through life, hoping that maybe one day that feeling will make sense. There were people who came into my life during those years. Some stayed for a while. Some left without much explanation. Each of them brought something different. Conversations, memories, lessons. But the silence never completely disappeared. It was always there in the background, like a shadow that followed every step I took. At first, I thought maybe that was just who I was. Maybe some people are simply meant to carry that quiet loneliness forever. Maybe not every heart finds the place where it truly belongs. And for a while I accepted that idea. I told myself that life didn't need to be perfect to be meaningful. That you could still build a life worth living even if something inside you always felt slightly incomplete. So I learned to live with the silence. I filled my days with movement and purpose. I learned to enjoy my own company. I discovered strength in solitude, wisdom in quiet moments, and a certain peace in knowing that not every question in life needs an answer. But even then, there were moments when the silence felt heavier than usual. Moments when the world slowed down and I felt like I was standing still while everyone else kept moving forward. Moments when I wondered if somewhere out there was a person who would understand the parts of me I never showed anyone else. Not just the good parts. The complicated parts, the quiet thoughts, the fears we rarely say out loud. Because real connection isn't about perfection. It's about being seen for who you truly are and realizing that someone else still chooses to stay. Back then, that idea felt almost impossible. I had grown used to the silence. It became something familiar, something predictable. It followed me through long drives at night, through empty streets under dim lights, through moments when the world seemed to pause and breathe. And in those moments, I sometimes wondered if my heart was simply waiting for something it might never find. But life has a strange way of surprising us, because sometimes the longest silences exist for one reason: to make the moment when they finally end feel unforgettable. And for a long time, before you appeared in my life, I lived inside that silence without realizing that every quiet step I took was slowly leading me toward the one person who would change the way the world sounded forever. There are moments in life that don't feel real at first. Not because they're impossible, but because something about them feels too perfectly timed to be ordinary. Like the universe quietly shifted something behind the scenes, moving pieces around until two paths that had been traveling separately for years finally crossed. The day you came into my life felt like that. Not loud. Not dramatic. There were no fireworks in the sky or music playing in the background. The world looked exactly the same as it always had. People were still walking past, the wind was still moving through the air, and time kept moving forward like it always does. But something inside me changed in a way I can't fully explain. It was subtle at first, just a feeling. The kind of feeling you get when something familiar suddenly appears in a place where you never expected to find it. A quiet recognition that doesn't need logic or explanation. I remember looking at you and feeling something I had never felt before. Not excitement the way people describe in stories. Not the kind of emotion that rushes through you like a storm. It was calmer than that, deeper. Like my heart had finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. There was something about your presence that made the world feel steady. And the strange thing was I didn't understand why. We were two people who had lived completely separate lives. Two stories written on different pages shaped by different experiences, different struggles, different memories. Yet somehow standing there in that moment, it felt like our lives had always been quietly moving toward this exact point in time. I think that's the thing people misunderstand about destiny. They imagine it as something dramatic, something obvious, something that arrives with clear signs and perfect timing. But real destiny doesn't announce itself like that. Sometimes it arrives quietly. Sometimes it looks like a simple moment between two strangers who have no idea that their lives are about to change forever. That's what it felt like when I met you. There was no grand realization at first. No sudden declaration that you were the person my heart had been waiting for all these years. Instead, it unfolded slowly. Conversation after conversation, moment after moment. Little pieces of connection appearing where silence used to exist. I began to notice things. The way your voice carried a calm I hadn't felt in a long time. The way your presence made ordinary moments feel meaningful. The way time seemed to move differently when you were around, like the world had slowed down just enough for me to actually feel it. And somewhere along the way, something inside me started to understand. The quiet room in my heart, the one that had stayed closed for so many years, was no longer empty. You didn't force your way into that space. You simply walked in as if you had always known where the door was. And suddenly, all those years of waiting started to make sense. Because if I had met you earlier in my life, I might not have recognized what you meant to me. I might have been too young, too distracted, too uncertain about who I was or what I truly needed. But by the time you appeared, life had already shaped me into someone capable of understanding the depth of what I was feeling. Every mistake I had made, every lonely night, every road I had walked without knowing where it would lead, all of it had quietly prepared me for this moment. For you. And the more time we spent together, the clearer that truth became. You weren't just another person passing through my life. You were the answer to a question my heart had been asking for years, without knowing how to say it out loud. The silence that once followed me everywhere began to disappear. Not instantly, but gradually, like the first light of morning slowly replacing the darkness of night. And in its place, something new began to grow, a sense of belonging I had never experienced before. A quiet certainty that the long journey my heart had taken through time and solitude had finally reached the place it was always meant to arrive. Because sometimes destiny doesn't arrive as a sudden explosion of emotion. Sometimes it arrives as a person standing quietly in front of you and somehow, without saying a single word about it, they change the direction of your entire life. When you finally become aware of what real love feels like, you realize it's not about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about the quiet consistency of being with someone who makes the world feel steadier simply by existing. Love like that isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need constant proof. It exists in the calm spaces between words, in the shared silences, in the small choices we make every day to be present for one another. It's in the way your presence feels like a home I didn't know I was searching for, the way my heart recognizes yours without needing explanations, the way time slows when we're together, making even ordinary moments extraordinary. This kind of love is patient, because it has waited lifetimes to find the right moment, the right person, the right alignment of souls. It doesn't rush, it doesn't panic. It trusts in the path that has led us to each other, understanding that every twist, every challenge, every lonely night was part of the preparation, part of the quiet shaping that made this union possible. And now that we've found each other, there's a profound understanding that all those years of waiting were not wasted. They were necessary. Every heartbeat, every pause, every moment of longing and uncertainty has led to this. Love like this carries a weight and a grace, a depth that can only come from waiting, from surviving the silence, and from keeping faith that something extraordinary was out there, waiting for the exact moment to step into our lives. It's the knowledge that our hearts, after wandering through time and trials, have finally recognized one another, and that recognition alone carries the power to transform everything. Every glance, every touch, every shared breath becomes sacred because we understand how rare and precious this connection is. The love we share is not fleeting, not fragile. It is the culmination of lifetimes, the embodiment of patience, the quiet miracle that two wandering hearts, finally aligned, can create a life together that feels like it was always meant to be. It's a love that honors the past, cherishes the present, and looks toward the future with the certainty that nothing could have been more perfect, more right, or more deserved than this moment, the moment where waiting ends and a lifetime of hearts converge into one.